Welcome back. So this is a really interesting, it's for me also, it's a huge learning process because one really has never dealt with mental health and mental illness in any sort of significant way. Just, you know, you come across people occasionally and you're just grateful that you're okay, kind of thing. But, you know, there are lots of people now who suffer from other problems, you know, autism. Then there's Alzheimer's, which has become a very big issue now. And it's so difficult to see somebody you really care about and things who just cannot remember, cannot control, doesn't know what to do, can't feed themselves, you know. So how difficult is it and how frustrating for families? Because we were talking a little bit about families and the therapy for families. So how do you people, you know, what sort of training are you giving the staff here as how they should deal with families and...
That's an excellent question. In dealing with families and working with families, the main outcome is to give them increased awareness. So what is it? What are they working with? What is the individual by diagnosis? What are some of the symptoms that they're looking for? How capable they are. I think oftentimes family view the illness as a sense of loss. And it's not the sense of loss, it's that capability that people have. So that we're able to sustain a job because we have a set of skills, resources, and supports. That's how we sustain ourselves. So the team at the Recovery House, what they're looking at is individuals, different scopes, different needs, different interests, and they're doing it in terms of choice, hope, and empowerment. Choice, hope, and empowerment for the family, so they know what that means and how that's going to be coming back to them through their loved one. Choice, hope, and empowerment to share that I want to be a poem writer, that I want to eventually be a renowned photographer. And also the strategies that we use reduce the level of stigma. Because as people start demonstrating these capacities and these competencies and they're doing things in the community, people tend to say, I didn't realize that individuals with mental health diagnoses were this capable. So this is why psychiatric rehabilitation is a complement to existing service delivery. It affords people a chance to focus in on exactly what I want to learn and do, and the Recovery House is that unique opportunity.
You know, you talked about choices, hopes, empowerment, etc. But are there sort of things that could just trigger off a relapse? Any sort of small, and how do you deal with that when you have that thing happen and it triggers off some kind of reaction, like, you know, you did the reaction. So if it does that, then how do you deal with that? And, you know, you start all over again?
I think a part of that stigma is that it is that instantaneous. It usually is a process. You can almost see that someone is becoming agitated. It may take a day, a week, a month. It's not as if someone's going to have full-blown, what we call exacerbations. It's not going to be a full-blown illustration of the illness. And so practitioners, being skilled professionals, know what interventions to use. There's something called de-escalation, where you can speak to people and say, what did I miss something? What just happened? Speak to me, tell me why this is happening for you. There may be something in terms of a break, in terms of, well, let's disengage from this and let's start doing something else. And what is also so awesome is that after you get to know people and they're working in a community, others may come to staff and say, I've noticed that Barbara doesn't seem to be doing very well today. Can someone please go speak with her? So the community supports each other. But there's one key word we have yet to speak about today, and that's recovery.
Yeah.
And that word really, it does exist in the mental health system.
You can make a complete recovery?
Yes, because recovery doesn't always mean absence of the illness. It means that persons will be living with a diagnosis. So people have diabetes and work. People have cancer and work. They have heart disease and work. So now mental illness and mental health diagnoses are coming into that spectrum.
But don't you think there's a greater prejudice for someone who has mental health issues as opposed to someone who's diabetic because you know, they think, okay, carry the pen and, you know, inject themselves and... But
yes.
So how do your clients deal with that? I mean, how do they go out with the stress of every day? It's got to agitate them.
Good. So this is my chance to talk about peer support, which is the one I wanted to slip in. So it's very, it can be overwhelming if you think about all those people out there who are going to be judging you and you feel the stigma. The way that a person with a mental illness can survive that is through peer support. In the United States, peer support has become a very, very important part of a person's recovery. Recovery is not, yesterday I wasn't recovered, today I am. Recovery is a journey. Having to do with mental illness, it has to do with how am I going to be tomorrow? What am I going to be doing to raise my feeling of hope? One of the important parts of recovery is developing relationships with others who also are living with a mental illness.
Like group support.
Absolutely,
Exactly.
absolutely.
It's almost like
Like
AA
friends.
meetings or something.
Friends.
Yeah.
Friends.
And do you have
How do
mentor
we-
programs?
Pardon?
Mentor programs?
Mentor.
Oh,
mentor.
Absolutely.
Mental.
Mentor.
Oh, mentor.
Yeah.
Mentor programs. Peer support can be mentor, but it also can be just friends.
Okay.
You know, if you're feeling down, who do you call?
Okay,
You
a
know?
friend. Yeah.
Yes. And you and
Lifeline.
your friend
That's right.
listens
It's-
and
it's- yeah,
listens
it's
and
like a lifeline,
listens and
yeah.
listens and listens until your friend hears that special moment to give you support, and you can get on with the rest of it. So it's the same thing. So a person may in fact go out into the community on an outing, and it's the first time that they maybe have decided, I'm going to go on an outing, and I'm going to go to the market, Zena Market maybe,
Yes, of course.
and,
Zena Market's a good
and I'm
choice.
going to have my own money, and I'm going to make a decision to buy something, and I'm going to negotiate. She knows how to negotiate. Oh, she knows how to negotiate. Her skills are very high.
I'm
So,
taking her
but
shopping.
perhaps this person feels that once they got the diagnosis, everything was lost. But it wasn't. It's still back there. It's hiding behind their experiences, and it needs to be brought forward. So you go to Zena Market, and you're with perhaps a couple of other people, and you go and you see something you want, and you know you have this much money, and the vendor says, and you say, nay, nay, this much, and negotiate, and it works. Then you go back to the recovery house that night. What happens over dinner? What are they going to be talking about? I can look what I got.
Look what I got and look how much I paid for it. You
Yes,
really want
yes,
it so
yes,
much.
yes,
And I,
yes,
Right, exactly.
Okay, so that's good. But when you talk about peers and groups and things, I mean, how big are these groups here? You know, are they organized in Pakistan? Are they reasonably well organized? Yes.
No, not in Pakistan.
Not in Pakistan.
Not formally.
Okay.
But trust me, in every psychiatric hospital or every setting where there are people living with a mental illness, they are quietly talking with each other. They're quietly saying, it's okay, it's a hard day. You'll make it through that day, that eye contact, because they already know what it means to be in that dark moment. And they can be the most important person in that time period. For that person the person who's feeling dark, to get through the day and make it to the next day and the next day.
But you said that formal groups don't exist here. But is there a program to kind of set them up or to do something? Because I know that there's some to alleviate addiction, suffering. They have groups. There are. So there's a precedent for this.
Correct. Yes.
So what about doing it here in a situation like this? Because here I would imagine you need a lot of support, constant support, because little things, as I said, we're a cruel world, you know, and this is a particularly cruel society. And just the stress of every day, you know, most people don't get vacations in this country. They just don't have vacations.
No, I can't believe it.
They
People
work
work 7 days a week.
They work their whole lives. They don't get vacations.
Right.
Now, if you work your whole life and don't get a vacation, you've got, you know, it's got to build up the stress, the pressure.
And I think that one of the, you know, what Barbara is confirming is that the need for that parallel word to peer support, that if you're not utilizing the mental health system, we call it our friendship network, our friends, our family and our friends. Here's a great example. We have a participant at the recovery house who recently, because I know that weddings are a huge part of the culture here in Pakistan, and there was an opportunity, there was an invitation for them to attend the wedding. So what happens is that the staff of the recovery house do what's called before, during, and after. Before the wedding, let's talk about what do you want to wear. Let's talk about what happens if something were to maybe be upsetting to you, or who can you call? Make sure you have your cell phone with you when you go to the wedding. How long do you want to stay at the wedding? How are you going to arrive there? This individuals, actually there were 2 participants that went to the wedding. They went together. They're part of the same family network. They went together and they came back to the recovery house. Now who's going to go running up to them? Their friends, their peers, and staff. Everyone wanted to know, how was the wedding? I wanted to know, what did you wear to the wedding? That was my priority. Yeah. What did you wear to the wedding? And the young woman took me into her room and showed me all of her garments. She showed me her adornments. She showed me her makeup. I mean, it was just an incredible feeling of worth and connectedness that maybe people historically would have thought was never possible. People might have feared having someone attend the wedding. These are quote unquote unchaperoned individuals. Yeah. No, they were successful. They went, they came back. One of the most important things was, what was whispered to us was, I didn't get back until midnight. That was exciting for them, that they were out for that entire wedding. The car didn't turn into a pumpkin, I gather. So these are the success stories. Yeah. These are what family are now coming back to Recovery House and thanking their staff for being able to achieve with their loved ones.
So how long does someone usually spend at the Recovery House? I know, I'm sure it goes from case to case, but on average?
Well, that's an interesting question, because what we can't do now is lump people together. Yeah. So it's deeply personal and unique. It's an individual process. There are some individuals who reside there and may reside there for several months. There are some persons who come into the psychiatric rehabilitation program on a daily basis.
So and go home in
that's right, and then go home in the evening. And what is so remarkable is when they go home in the evening, they have stories to share. They're no longer just saying, I paced around Karachi, I walked around the city. They're saying, oh, when you come back, mother, father, you'll see that my photography has been framed and my caption about what it means to me is up in the gallery. So there's a lot of different opportunities for them to come back and share what their day entailed.
And how many times a week, a month, or whatever, do their families come in, you know, to the Recovery House?
This is challenging. This is challenging. I learned from staff. This is challenging and frustrating for staff because staff know that it's really important to have a team effort for encouragement and celebrating successes. What may be they may see it as a really small success. They don't understand that celebrating that small success grows that self-esteem and that feeling of hope that I can go back and spend more time with my family. So sometimes a family will be so relieved that this person can now be at the recovery house. Whew, we're done. You know, let them fix it. And they don't understand that they have to be part of the team. Yeah. So sometimes the staff will get on the phone and really be calling and encouraging, come back for psychoeducation. Part of the intake is, you know, if you have your family member here at the recovery house, one of your responsibilities is to come here and get the family psychoeducation, or they may not call it psychoeducation, to come and learn more information. And to have a relationship with a psychiatrist and then also the psych rehab specialist. But it's really hard for them to think of, well, what do I have to contribute? What does it matter whether I'm involved with this or not? They don't understand they are an incredibly important part of the team.
The whole process. You know, you're talking about teams and things. There are lots of cases where people are housed in facilities like the recovery house, where they're just housed there because they either have no family or they have a more extended family that really this is not their responsibility, but they're doing something about the problem, which is their relative who has a serious illness. Or
I'm glad you actually raised that, because the recovery house is not a warehouse, right? It doesn't just house individuals. Everyone there has a direction and a purpose. Right. So they have an aim in life. There are some individuals who work during the day and are residing at the recovery house. And each person is moving through, returning to something. One thing that I think is very important to talk about is how we define life in rehabilitation, because everyone has lives. And one of the things that's so important is that we break life into 4 components: living, learning, working, and socializing. It's what we do every day, week, month, and year. So when participants come in, we say to them, is there anything you want to do? We don't necessarily say living, learning, working, and socializing, but is there something you want to work on here that comes under those dimensions? When we talk about it with family, we say we're going to increase people's functioning, their ability to be the least amount of direction and be successful and satisfied in living, learning, working, and socializing. So when you approach life and you're approaching it that you're capable and we're just going to wait for when that arrives in you, the atmosphere is so enriching and supportive and the energy is there. It's an exciting process to see.
No, I'm sure the recovery house is different, but there are lots of facilities, I know, and they're all over the world where people just go and live there and their families come once in a while, maybe, you know, once in a month. But there are also lots of situations where the family is not involved at all because sometimes there is no family to be involved.
Right.
So, you know, like what happens to those patients? I mean, how difficult is it for them to kind of, you know, have that choice, hope, empowerment that you talked about?
Well, this is why there's such a need for awareness and more. It's not only the more functioning for the individual who has living with the illness, but we need to make functioning systems. In the United States, we have people who are homeless, who are living with a mental illness, and we have outreach programs. It's never going to go away, but if we have systems that are responsive to people with a mental illness, to be able to communicate and connect with them and give them some sense of safety and a chance to think about what's going on. Connections are really what it's all about. Because if a person thinks that, okay, I'm just going to be, I'm mentally ill, that's what the person is thinking. They may forget that they're a person. I'm a person who has a mental illness. And as a person, you want to seek out learning about, you know, finding what I need, finding the supports. And certainly one of the most valuable supports for people who lack connection, lack family, has been in the US, the peer support movement. Very, very important. People who live with a mental illness, who go out into the community themselves and find their folks who they know are struggling, because they may have been there themselves. Right. Perhaps they find a house together and they rent it, you know, and they maybe all have part-time jobs. In the U.S. we have the ability to get some income from the government. So that they can make some of their own decisions. Then they may, instead of the recovery house, they may have an agency that the government gives the agency money to help people. They also put regulations on and requirements, but
here, unfortunately, there's not that much support.
Unfortunate and fortunate, but unfortunate and fortunate, because recovery house, because there is no government saying you'll do it this way or this way. The recovery house can say, let's explore what's the best way for the people we are serving.
I agree, but you know, there's also responsibility I feel the state has, and it should fund projects like this and things. But what about volunteers? Do you get a lot of people who volunteer, come in and want to help and want to be friends and be part of this whole sort of support group, you know?
We just had a very unique opportunity. Just this past Sunday, December 10th, we had a seminar. And in the seminar, we had invited psychiatrists, psychologists, psychiatric nurses, universities, and we were encouraging people to kind of become more aware of what psychiatric rehabilitation is and what they're doing at the recovery house. As a result of that, we have had 2 of the universities, students have contacted us and said, can we come down and be a part of that? I'm very good at social media. Can I help you with social media? I can get the word out that much easier for you. We have interns that are currently at the recovery house that are learning strategies that are not in their textbooks.
Right.
One of the important features I brought up at the seminar is that everyone in that room was making history. The implementation of psychiatric rehabilitation in Karachi is history making. It is groundbreaking. It has never existed before. So people are now very much interested to learn more about what it is, how it can help, different strategies and models. We use evidence-based practices. So there are models that we can help the recovery staff learn so they can achieve success and satisfaction with persons who they're working with.
This is fantastic. Unfortunately, we're so out of time, but it's been such an interesting
Already?
discussion already. Can you imagine? Just whooshed by.
Yes.
But I think that, you know, you've done so much here to dispel so many myths.
Good.
And to
Very
clarify some issues. And
Good.
I think that, you know,
Thank
they should
you.
encourage people. If someone at home, a loved one, has any kind of mental illness, obviously there are millions of things that can be done. There's so many, and it's so easy. You made it sound so simple and so easy to do. So I wish you both all the very, very best, and I hope your stay in Karachi continues to be exciting and fruitful, and I really wish the Recovery House all the success, and I hope they're able to replicate it and
thank you for
have
this
hundreds
opportunity.
more.
Thank you for the
Thank you
opportunity.
for
No,
the
it was my
opportunity.
pleasure. Dr. Veronica Carey and Dr. Barbara Granger, thank you both very much for being here today. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, would like to be on the show, want to know more about mental illness and how to deal with it, how to help people recover, and if you want to know about the Recovery House, do write to us at 24/7businessplusTV.pk.